In a segment called the Economic Newsflash, we just have Precious People, the Young Investors Program. They're going to be telling us everything related to market.
So the whole entire tariff situation between US and China really boils down to debt.
So tariffs are basically a tax that is imposed on any goods that are imported, right?
Yes.
So if there's...
To add on to that, what do tariffs mean for South Africa? So this means...
So right now, when you look at gold has just been reclassified into a tier 1 asset. So that means that gold is as valuable as cash. Last disclaimer, whatever we said here is not financial advice. Please do not act on it. We're not financial advisors. What we're doing is just sharing knowledge that we've just accumulated through our studies and experiences. Thank you. Manufacturing, that a lot of manufacturers in America cannot compete with Chinese manufacturers. And right now it's causing, because the trade deficit also leads to also a debt also issue. So the whole entire tariff situation between US and China really boils down to debt. And I'm not sure if you've just seen on the news that almost, I'll say every major economy has a debt issue. The UK has a debt issue, the US has a debt issue. Right now in South Africa we also have a debt issue because our bond issue rates I think are above 10%, which for a developing country issuing debt at that rate is very, very high risk because we don't have any economic growth.
I'm intrigued. What is you mentioned, is it a bond rate?
Yes, the
10%. What is that?
So basically, what happens is that the government doesn't just collect taxes, right, and spend it on services. What happens is that when a government constructs a budget, there are times where the budget has a shortfall or they're in surplus, but regularly right now we've been in deficit. So what the government does to compensate for that deficit, they go into a place called the bond market and they issue out, basically asking corporates or, for example, maybe pension funds for money to borrow so then they can pay them back later. So the rate that they're borrowing that money at basically is at 10%, which for, let's say, if you look at comparatively to the United States, it's only at 4.2% because the United States is basically the global financial sector of the world. So you can see that those two rates are very different. And if the United States are struggling at a 4.2% rate, imagine South Africa at a 10%.
Yeah. Before, I think we're just also going to go pay the bills and we'll probably be back. I just want to ask also, it's probably my question that I want to, what does it mean? Because we've been seeing the tariff, US tariff, China tariff, everyone is getting tariffs. South Africa, I think, got 30%. What did mean for South Africa? But I want you to hold that thought because we're going to go pay the bills and we'll be right back. The time's exactly 21 minutes after the hour, 12 o'clock, and they are still listening to you, Udubs Radio, where the vibe is at, where the vibe is being redefined. This is the Fortune Capital. So right now we're on a segment called the Economic Newsflash. We just have Precious People, the Young Investors Program. They're going to be telling us everything related to market.
Okay, so to answer your question about tariffs, what do tariffs mean? So tariffs are basically a tax that is imposed on any goods that are imported, right?
Yes,
so if there's a 30% tariff on South African goods by the US, it means that whatever good is imported by Americans, so that would range from fruits to our wine, they get a 30% tax on top of the price that the producer would have charged that specific company or individual, right? So when you look at tariffs 145% against China, that would mean that US consumers are now purchasing those goods at more than double the price that the producer manufactured them at and basically priced them for the market. So having high tariffs like that means that the consumer is strained, right? Because that's how they're a form of tax for the government to collect revenue as well. So the consumer is put on a bad foot because now they're spending more than they had originally planned for, and so the economy as a whole is affected because the spending power of consumers is then how can I say this? It's squeezed in a way,
So to add on to that, what do tariffs mean for South Africa? So this means South Africa is a big importer or exporter of wheat and agriculture to America. So now what's going to happen is Americans are not going to want to buy South African wheat or any agricultural products because they're going to see, it's much more expensive. So maybe I should look for agricultural products in America or somewhere that has lower tariff rates. So that will actually have an impact on our GDP, because then it'll cause a less demand for our wheat in the US market, which is like our biggest importer of our agricultural business, such as wheat. So the tariffs can also, how it will affect South Africa is you could see a lower GDP number at the end of it, because not as many people will be buying our wheat, and exports increase GDP.
To finally add, funny enough that Trump, while adding 30% on tariffs, actually excluded gold and platinum. Therefore,
So he sees where our value lies.
yes.
Yeah.
So right now, if you just join us, we're still having the Young Investors Program on the studio. So they're going to be talking about where we go right now.
We're going to the shiny stuff. We're going to gold. So to speak about gold, it's been quite the sector with a very big investment opportunity, given the uncertainty of the whole world, And so our focus has been stocks such as Anglo Gold, Goldfields, Pan African, and Sibanye Stillwater, right? All these companies also operate in South Africa.
Yeah.
Our listeners could find them on the JSE as well. So these stocks have had quite an amazing year. Obviously going back from last year, so the year-to-date movement for Anglo Gold is 92.86%, meaning that if you bought in last year, you have almost doubled your money. Goldfields is their year-to-date movement is 64.71%, Harmony 88.53%, Pan Africa is 45.3%, Sibanye Stillwater, their year-to-date movement has been 52.54%, right? And then for comparison, the JSE All-Share Index and the top 40 year-to-date movements are 9.23 and 11.94. So this would make sense why the shiny stuff is so valuable, right? And now, to think about why they've become so valuable, why gold has become so valuable to us. Ever since like President Trump took office again, he has come up with policies that have thrown like the markets into too much chaos and uncertainty. And this was seen with his tariff and trade war liberation day policies. Investors were wary of all the shocks as these policies they were very wary of these policies, right? And we're looking at gold and gold miner stocks as these are the stocks that the investors would choose to go to in times of uncertainty, right? And so let's think about why do they think about gold as a safe haven, right? In periods of like geopolitical tension, economic downturns, or the market is just volatile, which means that it's just sensitive to whatever's happening. President Trump says something, then the market goes in another direction. Investors tend to seek assets that are perceived as safer and more stable, right? And so gold has a long history of maintaining value and is not tied to any one currency or economy, making it attractive during crises, right? It's also a very good inflation hedge, right? And so inflation, if you think about inflation, it takes away value from the money that you have today, right? When inflation rises, or the value of the fiat currency, which would be your rand, dollar, Zim dollar, or whatever, investors buy gold to preserve more purchasing power. They preserve more gold to buy purchasing power, and this increased the demand for gold and obviously the gold mining stocks.
32 minutes after the hour, 12 o'clock, and you are still listening to Udubs Radio with the vibe. With the vibe is being redefined. Thank you for choosing us over the world as we are choosing you over the universe.
Just to continue on the role of gold in the market, what also historically gold has also played a pivotal role in avoiding or solving economic crisis. So right now, when you look at gold has just been reclassified into a tier 1 asset. So that means that gold is as valuable as cash, meaning that banks view it as more liquidable, the same as cash, because we're looking at liquid. So you find that a lot of institutions that hold gold are mostly your central bankers. So your South African Reserve Bank, your US Fed. So they use gold as a way to basically, control prices into the market by selling and buying. In a sense, also to hedge also the other assets. So now we're going to go into one of a background for one of the junior miners or the mining companies here in South Africa. So one of them is called Anglo. So Anglo is a global gold producer, Anglo is a leading international gold mining company with operations in 11 countries across 4 continents, including key regions like Africa, the Americas, and Australia. So, production and resources. In 2023, the company produced 74,700 kilograms of gold and 508 kilograms of silver as a byproduct. Its total measured and indicated mineral resources stood at 1.7 million kilograms with a mineral reserve of 797,000 kilograms. Focusing on operational focus, in addition to South Africa, Anglo Gold has gold mining and exploration activities across other parts of Africa, including Ghana, Tanzania, and Guinea. South Africa has historically contributed a significant share of the company's output, even as the company shifts focus to other growing markets.
Okay. And to speak about another of our focus points, how many gold operates 9 underground mines and several surface facilities in the Witwatersrand Basin and Grypan Greenstone Belt, with gold reserves totaling 22.5 million ounces, which is approximately 638.4 metric tons, and resources of 90.5 million ounces, which are about 2,655 metric tons. And the production and financial performance. So in the financial year of 2024, how many gold produced 48,937 kilograms of gold, which surpassed its target, and saw a 16% rise in the average gold price, which led to record operating cash flow of approximately like 12.7 billion rands. And they also invested in renewable energy projects, right? They have a 30 megawatt solar power project already commissioned, and plans for an additional 137 megawatts by 2027, aiming to supply 20% of peak electricity demand. They've also been combating illegal mining, as that is very prevalent in South Africa, and the company has reduced illegal mining by 93.5% since 2016, investing 647 million in security measures and working with law enforcement to combat this issue. And lastly, the workforce and safety. How many employs about 43,175 individuals in South Africa, and has significantly improved safety in some operations while achieving over 3 million loss of life free shifts.
Exactly. So when I'm just tempted to ask, how significant is gold? Because I think we've seen for the past years and past countries tend with more military power, with more big armies, with more nuclear weapons, tend to have a much huge buying power. How significant is gold then? Is it the army or is it the gold?
I would say that the gold translates to how well funded their army can be. I think that would be a simple way to think about it, right? So if you look at countries like France, right? France has a very large gold reserve, right? Which those gold reserves are, the gold comes from African countries, right? And if you were to look at their presence in those African countries, France had a very strong military presence. But obviously, as of late, there's been a very good revolution in terms of Pan-Africanism, and so Africans have been focused on owning those resources themselves. And so I think we may start to see an increase in African military power the more we get to hold on to these resources ourselves, because we'll have more trading power in that regard, seeing how gold is valued worldwide.
So from what I'm hearing, the more the gold, the more the power.
The more the gold, the more the power.
And just to add just a few points there, you could see in the market of gold, the two significant buyers of gold are China and India. And if you currently read in the news, India started a war with Pakistan, but it's just been on hold. There's also a market risk where China is preparing to basically invade Taiwan. So you could see there's a correlation between gold and war, in a sense, and also in terms of also building capacity.
But again, it's in politics. Is China really going to take Taiwan? Because I think it's been like for 10 years now saying China will do it, and I think that's when the US started moving to the, I think, Asian Ocean or something like that.
I think it's possible, because if you look at what China is doing with Taiwan, it's essentially what Russia and Ukraine were going through, right? I think Russia just had, obviously, it's center stage. It's always center stage, right? But in terms of trying to control that area, right, it's beneficial for Russia's economy, right? I think the same logic can be applied to the China and Taiwan situation, and so it's the conflict has been ongoing. I think now it's just starting to take center stage because these sort of conflicts are popping up everywhere now, and so now everyone is taking notice on them.
Yeah. Just to add a few points on that, the reason why China will definitely go to Taiwan is that Taiwan, in terms of ideologies, is what we call a bad mark on Chinese communism. The reason why is that Chinese communism or market practices are the ideal in Chinese society. And if China's society can see what's going on in Taiwan and see how their liberal society is being conducted, how they've achieved economic growth, that might reverse or, in a long run, impact the authority on the Chinese Republic.
So yeah, I think in closing, generally, do you think the war, although it has been put on hold between India and Pakistan, will affect us in some certain way? Because you remember, for Ukraine and Russia, I think we had like a increased price of like cooking oil because of the sunflowers that we were getting in Ukraine apparently. So do you think the Pakistan Indian war will affect South Africa as well?
Looking at it, India is actually a significant partner in BRICS. So imagine if India is sanctioned by the US government, conducting business with them will be very difficult. So therefore, if, let's say, for example, the war resumes, it would significantly impact, the future trajectory of South Africa's economic policies. Because right now we have Russia that's in war, that has sanctions. Now we have India. Who's next? China. So significantly, looking at our trading blocks, it will significantly, because as we see that South Africa, India, Russia, and China are trying to build a trading bloc where basically they can develop their own economic policies to benefit. So now if everybody's sanctioned and the biggest consumer in the world is sanctioning you,
you're gonna have a big problem.
You're gonna have a big problem.
So I think we just came to a conclusion. Last part of our show. What is Young Investors Program? If someone wanna join the you were to like get to communicate with Young Investors Program, and just overall in closing.
So if you want to get in contact with the Young Investors Program, you can follow us on social media. We have an Instagram, we have a LinkedIn. So you can just check us out on those two platforms. And
words of closing, or it's just done.
My advice would be start investing young. It's very cheesy, but like trust me, compounded growth is better than now you are 35 and now you can put down that 20K on a big investment. Grow it slowly. Start now, grow your mind.
What we said here is not financial advice. Please do not act on it. We're not financial advisors.
Please.
What we're doing is just sharing knowledge that we've just accumulated through our studies and experiences. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to say thank you to Young Investors Program to just join us today. Probably, I hope, in the week coming forward, they're going to be joining us.